Welcome back, everyone. Today we have 7 Karens who basically think they rule the world. So grab some popcorn and your favorite beverage because we have airline passengers, coworkers, family members, you name it. Let's jump into it. I went to breakfast with a friend to celebrate kids being back in school. We walk into the restaurant and are told their computers are down, and only 2 servers are working just now, so everything is a bit slow. No worries. We take a seat. We are enjoying not being in a rush. Don't worry about us. We chat and have a lovely, leisurely breakfast. As we are eating, I hear the staff telling folks coming in the same thing, having to take down card numbers because computers are down, ordering system down, understaffed. Please be patient. Hope to have everything up and running smoothly soon. Most people are like us, not in a hurry, smiling and happy to have a cup of coffee and take it easy. Then in walks entitled lady. Firstly, she had to wait a whole 2 minutes for help to come up to her. Apparently, that was enough to already put her in a mood. Either that or she's just perpetually pissed off. Because when the server came over to tell her the story and added, "It will be about 20 minutes till I can seat you. We've got all we can handle right now. I'm sorry." Entitled lady jumps down the poor server's throat. "No, there's not a 20-minute wait. There are plenty of tables open." Then I kid you not, the server blinked, looked at this woman, took a breath, and said, "You know what? You're right. We're closed. Thank you. Bye now." And she shooed the woman around and out the door. I nearly cheered out loud. She told the old gentleman who came up to work the seating booth to tell anyone else they were closed for the next little bit until they could catch up or get the systems running. And my friend and I just smiled and smiled through the rest of our meal. I love a side of karma with my eggs and coffee. I don't know about you guys, but I think this Karen absolutely got what she deserved. If you're going to treat servers like crap, I really hope that they could just have a backbone and kick everybody out. I feel like this was kind of a special scenario because the hostess obviously had backing by management and not everybody is that lucky. But yeah, this Karen definitely got what she deserved. She can go to McDonald's for breakfast instead. The other day, I had a 4-hour international flight to get home. I'd already booked a business class seat. Larger seat equals more comfort instead of being squished together like sardines in main cabin. When I went to pre-board, the gate agent told me she'd moved me farther forward. Okay, cool beans. Thank you. They wheeled my disabled self to the door of the plane, and I discovered I was now sitting in first class. Score! I love first class, but it's usually prohibitively expensive, so I rarely buy a first class ticket. The only other person pre boarding in a wheelchair is sitting just in front of me in first class, and I had just watched her make a huge production of getting aboard, crying, whining, and yelling. I sense she's a tad dramatic because she's only got an over the counter, not so supportive knee support on, no crutches or cane. Nothing medical issue that you'd get with a serious knee injury or disease. But whatever, people are entitled to be as weird as they want to be. Once regular boarding started, I got to see my seatmate for the flight, a man with a magnificent quiff of chestnut hair and a man bun and a large beard. He was dressed in old shorts and had an old stained tee. I'd watched folks looking like they'd bathed in hand sanitizer, giving him wide berth and a variety of not very friendly looks in the airport waiting room. I'd seen how they were treating him and thought I'd love to know his story. So lo and behold, he's sitting with me, just behind Karen. We settled in, and over wine we started talking. He's a federal and military retiree, just like my husband, and he's traveling around the world, going places that strike his fancy with merely a backpack. We're having a good conversation with a bit of laughing thrown in, but we're speaking at regular conversational level, not loudly at all. We've only been airborne 30 minutes or so when Karen starts yelling for the flight attendants to move myself and this gentleman because her reasoning we were dirty hippies who didn't belong in first class. He and I are looking at each other and laughing at that. We're both post 60. Yes, he's dressed very casually, but is clean and doesn't smell. I'm wearing an outfit of linen tunic printed on an etoll fabric, black pants, and Birkenstocks. This is an outfit that one of my kids teases me makes me look like I'm on my way to teach yoga in Connecticut. Sort of alternative, sort of suburban upper class lady. Thankfully, the flight attendant had a lot of common sense telling Karen she's not moving us anywhere, but she will ask us to pipe down some if that helps Karen. We both smiled at the attendant and that she didn't even have to ask. We'll be more quiet. Lunch followed by a nap. When we arrived in Costa Rica, I got to see Jetway Jesus experience as Karen was suddenly able to walk without much trouble once her suitcase arrived. I just had to laugh at this as the guys at the airport pushed me out to my car. I swear, I feel so sorry for everyone having to deal with folks like this. So you mean to tell me she was over exaggerating her condition and then just had to be miserable the entire flight because people decided that they were going to have a nice little chat instead of sitting in silence and just listening to the hum of the aircraft. I understand sometimes people get a little bit cranky while they're traveling, but this Karen definitely seems like a special case. I work at a small town pizza place. Each final bill is usually somewhere between $20 and $40, so the tips aren't amazing, but they're still something. Overall, I like my job and the people I work with the exception of this one guy who we'll call Kevin. On his first day a few weeks ago, Kevin came in high out of his mind and ended up getting sent home. Everyone has bad days, so whatever, but at least come able to work on day one. He's training to serve, and I was working with him and the trainer this past Monday. I had a table of a few of my regulars who always leave me a $5 bill. I said, have a good night and all that, watched them put it in the little bill sleeve and walked off to attend another table. I come back to start bussing after they leave and the tip is gone. I immediately tell the manager that someone took my tip and he goes to ask Kevin. Kevin, without saying anything, pulls the $5 bill from his apron and hands it to the manager with a scowl. The audacity itself was one thing, but I was just glad to have the money back, so I ignored it and was just more diligent about watching my tables for the rest of the night. Later, right before I clock out, Kevin comes up to me and while walking past me says, "You didn't have to say anything, you have got to be kidding." Told the manager again, I am not one to deal with all that. Anyway, he called out 2 days ago to say his phone was broken, so he couldn't come to work, and called out today saying he forgot and had plans. I don't think he will have a job to call out of soon, or at least I hope so. I understand this is sort of an entry level, probably minimum wage job, but it seems like some people are just not prepared to do even the most basic jobs. And then to have the audacity to steal his coworkers' tips clearly makes him a proper Kevin. I have a very annoying colleague. Let's call her Karen. I and the rest of the office can share 1,000 stories about her behavior. She was playing a mobile game with sound on. One other girl, Val, told her to put it on silent. The first thing she did was scold Val for the time she spoke to someone and Karen got disturbed. Val speaks to one other colleague in her mother tongue. They don't do it when they are in a group, but when they are discussing something amongst each other, they prefer their negative language. This bothers Karen too much because she comes to the office only to eavesdrop on the rest of us. She's severely lagging behind in all her work. The next thing she did was tell everyone in the department, whoever was patient enough to listen, that Val has a problem with Karen's message notifications, completely skipping the game bit. Then she caught me while I was having tea. Surprisingly, or not, she catches me on a very specific days when she has something to tell me. This hasn't happened in a while, and I have a lot of work that day, so my guard was lower. Karen told me that Val was saying I expose in the office and that my attire is inappropriate. Then she said that everyone in the department agrees. Most of the time, I ignore whatever comes out of Karen's mouth, but due to too much stress, I immediately reported Val to our boss. For the record, I work at a university and mostly just wear crop tops and jeans, or sometimes sundresses, which is very common in our department. The only difference is that I'm slightly curvy and have a full head of frizzy hair. Think Hagrid. But no one in the department has ever made a comment, including my female boss. Boss was super supportive and told me she'll take action against Val, but suggested that I speak to her first. I was not looking forward to that because Val is much junior than me and has always kept her distance. I actually believed what Karen said, even though I knew Karen must have twisted something. I definitely believe that Val must have made at least a small comment about my attire, so I didn't say anything and went home for an extended weekend. When I came back, I had a clearer head and time on my hand. I finally called Val near my desk, in full view of Karen. Val told me she asked Karen to turn her phone on silent, and since she's on a hate mission against her, spreading all kinds of lies about her. Then we watched Karen practically run out of the office, not even stopping to put on her bag properly. I updated the boss and heard from my colleagues that Karen came to the office super early the next morning to do damage control with the boss. Coworker Karens are the worst, honestly, especially the ones that decide they're going to go around and try to pin everybody against each other so that the focus on them not doing their job and playing games on their phone doesn't have the spotlight on it. I'm really curious to know how that whole damage control thing went, and hopefully she's on thin ice with the boss now. I'm 20 and worked at a semi fine dining steak place as a lead trainer and server. One of my trainees, let's name her Karen, was 22, female, and had no experience at all. That is fine, I'm totally down to teach. She was great in the beginning, she just needed to work on her hospitality. She shadowed me for the first day before she was allowed to give it a go. I have to be tied at the hip with my trainee, basically, and Karen hated that. By the third shift, we were swapping pitching two tables, and I was giving her constructive criticism very softly, since I could tell she would take it to heart. I had explained to her I need to follow her everywhere, maybe except the bathroom, of course, and she told me basically, I can do this job, it's not hard, leave me alone, and bolted away. I found her again and softly explained why I needed to be by her. She scoffed and ran off to the bathroom. During this time, we do surveys if the customers would like to say their input on the trainees. I talked to a table I had, and this is what they said. She was extremely rude to us when you weren't around, and half of our stuff came out really late. I apologized, told them I would be taking over their service, and moved on. Once she left the bathroom, I spoke to her about what the table said. This was her response. It's not my fault other servers won't run my food, and it's not my fault that the table didn't know what they wanted. Girl, it's literally in the training to recommend dishes, and girl, you were standing around in the kitchen doing nothing when your food was simply waiting to be ran. Not to mention, she could have asked me for help since I was shadowing her, but she decided to run off. This repeated for the rest of the night. At the end of the third shift, I sent her home. I spoke to my boss about my concern as I was just about to get a talking to for not being tied at the hip with her. My boss had an oh shit, that's insane moment, and we agreed for me to take a different trainee and see if she passes her audit. I heard from my other trainer that she was a nightmare to work with and she would constantly talk shit about me behind my back. I wasn't too bothered, it's truly not my problem anymore, until her audit comes. I think she forgot I warned her that I run all the audits with a manager as long as I'm working that shift, and her audit so happened to be on my shift since I worked 5 days a week. I run them with no bias, only strictly based on points they have to hit that they learned in training. During the audit, she has to treat us like actual customers. Slowly but surely, she crashed and burned, and I constantly had to dock her points. I spoke with my manager to see if she was worth keeping and explained my experience training her. And all my manager said was, hell no. So we both spoke with her afterwards and told her she can try again if she studies, but if she fails again, she can't work here. She proceeds to blame me for training before I ask my manager to pull up the camera feed and ask if I can pull aside my other trainer to show that what she was saying is not true. All her accusations basically got shut down. It's safe to say Karen did not end up working here. Semi-fine dining and fine dining is not for everybody. I tried to be gentle in my training, but maybe she's better off at a more casual restaurant. I really tried to prepare her for the best I could, but some people aren't receptive, sadly. Yeah, I've certainly had the displeasure of training people who just don't want to be trained. And honestly, from my own experience, being in a position where you don't feel like you're well trained and you are currently doing something where you really would be better off being well trained in that moment is a horrible feeling. So I don't know why people can be so resistant to training, but clearly she was a proper Karen in just feeling like she could start doing a job and not be properly trained in a fine dining experience. This is about my very own entitled dad. Back when I was 14, we both went to a mall that had a very big home improvement electronics warehouse on one side of it. We park in the mall's underground parking lot, which is free, walk around, and have a nice time. Once we're done, my dad wants to swing by the aforementioned home improvement store quickly, so he decides to move the car to the stores paid unless you reach a certain minimum on your purchase lot, even though the store is inside the mall and we could easily access it by, God forbid, walking. My dad doesn't even bother to park properly. He leaves the vehicle running in the narrow path and walks in, leaving me to fend for myself with angry drivers honking. Some even came up to the car but realized I couldn't drive. Eventually, he comes back with a very flimsy package that could easily have been carried by us to the mall's parking lot and steers the car towards the gated exit. The gate doesn't open, so he rings the intercom and asks the rep to open the gate because he's in a hurry. The rep tells him he needs to pay in order to open the gate. My dad, like any sensible human being in his late 50s, starts yelling, threatening to call the police and whatnot. The woman remains composed and firmly stands her ground. Eventually, she hangs up on him since there's not much else to be said. My dad turns to me and drops the angry act completely with an oopsie tone and says, "Welp, thought this parking was free too, haha." As if he wasn't screaming bloody murder 5 seconds earlier. He pays, the gate opens, and we leave. This dude was clearly a proper Kevin. And you can't tell me when you're pulling into a parking garage like that it isn't like abundantly clear that you're going to have to pay, especially if it's gated. Like usually if you need to have a gate open to let you in, it's because you're pulling out a parking ticket that is keeping track of your time that you're in there for so that you can put the ticket in the machine on the way out and be told how much you owe for parking there. And then to park like a complete a-hole in everybody's way was just the icing on the cake as well. I worked as a pilot for an airline, and in the course of my duties, I ride our aircraft to and from home to our crew base. I often did this without uniform, with my only identifying feature being my work ID lanyard. My last flight before time off put us on the ground around noon. Being off duty, I immediately changed out of my uniform and took a seat from the gate where my flight home would depart from. Behind me, there was this rambunctious child that was using the seats as her personal playground and randomly squealing and screaming while doing so. While this is annoying and the squeals are like nails on a chalkboard to me, it's the reality of things. I just ignore it and browse through my tablet. Next thing I know, I catch a full scream in my ear. I turn my head and this kid is literally a couple of centimeters from my face and is hanging off the back of my chair. I immediately snapped at the kid, "Do not scream into my ear." That is when the Karen mother, who is just sitting there letting this happen, loses her shit. She darts up, standing over the seat behind me, yelling, "Don't you yell at my kid, how dare you?" The kid, meanwhile, has a shocked look but settles down and goes silent. Karen continues on, trying to goad me into arguing with her and doing everything but actually putting hands on me to escalate this into a physical fight. She even tries to encourage her kid to scream again, to which the kid just sat there quietly. I initially stare at her for a few seconds, then went back to ignoring her, the situation, and go back to looking at my tablet. She continues having a meltdown for 10 minutes before the man with her collected her, the kid, their things, and went elsewhere. I feel bad for the kid as I cannot see her future ending well with that sort of guidance. It was also a shame the mother flipped, as I likely would have given the kid wings that my company supplies us with after the kid calmed down. Yeah, that really is a shame because it straight up feels like that Karen is absolutely teaching her kid to grow up to be a Karen because she is letting the kid just be absolutely obnoxious to other people around and basically get away with anything that she wants without so much as being told to sit down and be quiet. It doesn't seem to matter where we go in life, as Karens always seem to find us in one way, shape, or form. Whether it's at the airport, we have the displeasure of having a Karen coworker, or even a family member. Let me know your craziest Karen story in the comments, and smash the thumbs up if you enjoy the content.